the right to life with dignity. And there comes the different perspective that is brought by the so-called marginalized sections, the Dalits, the Adivasis, the women, and the working classes. And that also gives a clue towards the action agenda of not just the movements, but also the common citizens and the citizenry which you too are a part of. How to really define this whole process that leads to not development induced but development imposed displacement, deprivation, destitutionalization, pauperization. That needs to be understood by this conference, and some conclusive resolution must be the result. This happens on one hand, as I just said, through the undemocratic development planning, but it also happens because there is the consumerist lifestyle that is being imposed on the crores of people in this country. Now, on one hand, the development imposed plans and policies are not decided at the Gram Sabha level or the Ward Sabha level, leave aside the Mohalla Sabhas in the urban areas, but rather it is decided at the fora like the US-India Forum, where the decision about the special economic zones happen to be taken, with Ratan Tata, Montek Singh Ahluwalia then, and Arun Jaitley and Nirmala Sitharaman now, or the Adanis and Ambanis, to say the least. It is taken at the World Bank, the IMF, the Asia Development Bank, and the various bilateral and multilateral agencies. When today at least there is so much debate over the World Trade Organization that really has turned the full paradigm away from the people's paradigm by imposing the concept of commodification of resources. दूध दही के देश में कोका कोला नहीं चलेगा. That has been the slogan of the moment. But is that percolated in the policies related to water management and water distribution? Sardar Sarovar, the great project that is now being taken ahead to be completed, submerging 2.5 lakh to 3 lakh people who are living the full life in the 244, if not 244, some are displaced, but at least 150 densely populated villages in a township today, with panchayat schools and everything going on. Its waters are first granted to Coca-Cola, 30 lakh liters per day. And then to the car industries, including Nano, 60 lakh liters per day. The land around the canals to be a part of the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, where 3,90,000 hectares of land is targeted and marked on the maps as investment regions, 20,000 hectares each, and industrial areas, 10,000 hectares each, engulfing 60% of Gujarat's land and 56% of Rajasthan's land, without there being any transparency. Why talk about the farmers who are in that region, those regions not knowing about it, but also the intellectuals unaware of this paradigm shift in their way from agricultural to industrial. So these kinds of planning processes which are imposed, the Japanese bank engaged itself with the Narendra Modi ji, the present Prime Minister, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, as long back, not so long back, in 2010, sitting in Gandhinagar, signing the agreement, which is not before us. The international agreements, the TRIPS and the TRIMS, and the comprehensive, most comprehensive of the agreements which are now trying to be pushed. The agreement on agriculture, for example, in spite of the severest agro crisis that this India is facing, with more than 300,000 farmers having committed suicide over last 10 years or so, it is necessary to understand that that is commodification, that is corporatization, that is prioritization, but that is also development in terms of the ideology that is being propagated by our political economic elites. So to talk about development and then to with folded hands अंधश्रद्धा के साथ उसको नमन करना, किसी सेठ जी की तस्वीर होती है एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स में टोबैको कंपनी की और कहते हैं सेठ जी ने बहुत बड़ा एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट किया, उस प्रकार से is really fooling ourselves. And when not only us, the common citizens, the academicians, the intellectuals, but those who represent us talk of the environment at those global fora, discusses climate change and compete with the developed countries, they are the ones who decide and define development for us, which is to be unacceptable. We have to really bring in even the amendment in the constitution if need be, to say that the assemblies and the parliaments at least should have the space in the decision making related to the international agreements. Otherwise, the chief minister or the prime minister, the blue-eyed voice of these international banks and the bilateral agencies, would keep moving in the whole world representing us, 121 crores of people, with 93% of the unprotected classes not getting the pension, no housing rights, the farmers not getting the due minimum support price here in Orissa and elsewhere. How can they be represented by those who signed the agreements before visiting whether Japan, France or Australia in favor of the corporates who fund their elections? It is this process that is pushed in the name of development, non-transparent but also non-accountable. That is resisted and that is challenged by the people's movement. If POSCO, the South Korean company, comes to Orissa and tries to get an agreement signed in its favor, getting away with the land for mining as well as the plants, if the thermal power projects, 15 of those come near every water body that is created on the rivers nowadays within 2 kilometers from the water bodies, so that all the benefits promised are diverted to them, as in the case of Narmada, where the river is going to be finished. How can that be just accepted as given by the local populations? So the resistance. When they make big claims of the benefits of the employment to be generated through these special economic zones, and then after years it is realized that the land forcibly acquired and transferred to those companies who get concessions under not less than 21 tax laws under the SEZ Act of 2005. Every party, right from then Bengal government to the Samajwadi government in Uttar Pradesh, had brought in some resolution or other in favor of those, but finally it came as an act in 2005. And then after years, the CAG gives a report saying that not more than 40% of the employment generation statistics come true. The power targets 8 lakh megawatt up to 2032. That is 60% getting as the thermal power from the thermal sources, will have 6 lakh megawatts, 600,000 megawatts by 2032 from thermal. But the projects signed by now really show the capacity of more than 7 lakh megawatt today itself. The targets and the plans and the policies go haywire, and there is no monitoring mechanism on behalf of either the directly affected people or all of us who are indirectly affected. When there is so much discussion now on the pollution of Delhi city because the elites, our rulers, stay there, तो राजाओं के दल में जब आ गया है सर, तो वो बहुत चिंतित हो गए हैं. अब वो सोच रहे हैं कि कार्स की कमी कैसे हो हर रास्ते पर. But they are also building the huge infrastructure to promote the car industries with no control on the privatization in the car industry and the transport policy. So on and so forth. Friends, it is very essential to take cognizance of all these crises, because without really going at the root of those crises and its genesis, like the drought in Orissa or the flooding of Chennai, we cannot really come down to give a solution to the problem which is expected not just from the activists but also the academicians. And hence there has to be this dialogue. I am seeing the research bringing out the inequity as the stark reality faced. 1% of population owning 49% of wealth and so on, against the directive principle. But एक बादशाह हुए, 1000 फकीर हो गए, इस principle के आधार पर depriving others of even the basic need fulfillment, which are to be the parameters to define development, as Professor Anand Kumar said it. So 467 billionaires in this country. Where has the wealth of the Ambanis and Adanis come from? Those have come from the mineral resources that gives them a courage and confidence to say, दुनिया मेरी मुट्ठी में. जैसे एक पूरी नदी घाटी का पानी एकत्रित करके शहरों को और कंपनियों को ज्यादा से ज्यादा देने की साजिश होती है, उस प्रकार की ये साजिश. And now they're becoming Indian multinationals, competing with the foreign multinationals. What is it that the state playing a role towards? State is playing a role towards promoting those kinds of transfers in the name of development that marginalizes not just the populations and the sections which are considered as downtrodden, but also the alternative visions and alternative models of development which could bring in the self-reliance, if not self-sufficiency, and decentralized development planning in this country and also in the world. So United Nations, which also has now the corporate's entry, fails to take care and cognizance of these battles which are on. If there is a war on the border of India and China, the United Nations would immediately intervene. But what when someone questions, like the Dalchin, the Three Gorges project in China, which finally is declared as not having brought the required results, but the floods in Yangtze, and hence the big banks like the Exim banks, the World Bank, do not fund the project, but the government pushes. In Brazil, the Amazon, with the people's movement Mavi, taking strong objection to the fact that when, as in the case of Singrauli region in India, 80% of Brazil's power comes from that valley, which I visited many times, but not even 20% of power goes back to them. So when in the name of development the marginalization is not just displacement, and not just the displacement without rehabilitation, but it is also unequal distribution of benefits, which I have just pointed out, that is questioned and challenged. And hence it is not to be taken as just a conflict between the catchment and the command, the populations in the Narmada Valley versus the populations in the Kutch and Saurashtra. Mind you, the time has come and it is happening that we both are joining hands, because both realize that both are peripheralized and the center gains the chunk of the cake. This needs to be brought out in the analysis as well. Not just the impacts which are immediate ones, but the long-term impacts with the longitudinal research that we all know is most important. If you can engage yourselves in the action research, that would go a further way. We really would welcome you, therefore, to really study the various aspects of development and its impacts through the action research, where you can be a part of the movement yourself. We all know that the latest gesture by the intellectuals of returning of the awards reacting to one or other kind of communalism and not just intolerance but violence that emerges out of it, which created a momentum, if not a full-fledged movement, because the long-term actions that will create the momentum and bring forth a long-term vision with the immediate to the long-term goals only can be called as a movement. And it needs perseverance. Whether all these artists and literatures really join and create that kind of movement is yet to be seen. But to the extent that they have contributed to the people's, the common people's questioning of the communal attitude also needs to be welcomed and saluted. We felicitated them on 6th of December because it is not just the religion but also the caste. And it's what other day but the Ayodhya Day and the Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar's Mahaparinirvan Day, the 6th of December, can there be to felicitate this kind of participation by the intellectuals? Friends, do not consider that as a small little gesture. Do not just question that as being a part of the party politics. Maybe those have some faith in some of the opposition parties, but that's not all. They are the intellectuals and literatures and artists who feel socially committed to the causes of the common people and the movements. And why the movements? The small citizens groups, the local communities who are reacting to all kinds of dividing and ruling policies and strategies of the electoral politicians, that is what they are taking over as their responsibility as well. Their concerns which have gone beyond their art and their literature is to be welcomed by all of us, and I would then appeal to all of you also to do the same. I do not know how easily it can happen, but if you are to be engaged in the dialogue on development, its politics, its economics, politicization of caste and religion, M.N. Srinivas' lecture is going to be delivered, then I would say that you can also go a little step ahead and participate to be a part of the larger movement that is trying to bring in change. The Occupy Wall Street to Occupy UGC. These are maybe the strong actions considered from your viewpoint. Although those are the simple actions to occupy little space and generate space on behalf of the students to the activists. But if only you can decide to do it in a way you can so easily, you can create a cadre of students who can be committed to the people's issues and people's movements. Some of them may be in struggle, some of them may be in reconstruction. Reconstruction is a part of the movement. Narmada movement is not known for its constructive work, building small micro-hydel projects, Jeevan Shalas over last more than 20 years, with 5,000 students coming out, not as big as 25,000 students here because we are resourceless in a way, but we are resourceful. With all those joining us and 17 gold medals earned by one single student as the best runner, as there are many amongst the Adivasis.
I think the duty comes to me. Professor Yedla C. Simadri had his college education in Andhra University and obtained his doctoral degree from Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, USA, for his thesis on ex-criminal tribes of India, a community study. He received his postdoctoral degrees from Germany and Japan and the degree of D.Litt for his work on denotified tribes of Andhra Pradesh. He was honored with the
Good afternoon to everyone. Honorable Medhaji, Honorable Professor Anand Kumar Sir, President Indian Sociological Society, Honorable Professor Achut Samant Sir,